Hello. Did you ever wonder what happens when you take your very last breath? Or when you have your very last heartbeat? Does your soul or spirit carry on to somewhere else? Is heaven or hell a fantasy or reality? Or do you just rest in peace and disappear? Well, today I'm going to tell you about a personal, powerful encounter I had in April 2000. You see, I was working for a private ambulance company. We just transported a patient to a specific hospital, which name of the hospital I'm not going to give for the patient privacy. So when we dropped off this patient, I was the driver, my partner was in the back. We gave our reports to the nursing staff, and the doctor took this patient over. I was in charge of cleaning the linen, switching out from the cot. So as I was grabbing new bed sheets for our cot, over the radio we heard a call. It was a fire department that was calling this hospital. When the nurse picked up the radio and responded, go ahead, whatever the fire medic engine was, they continued and replied over the radio. They said that they were en route with a 15-year-old male with a gunshot wound to the head. Immediately when I heard that, I quickly began to continue making my bed real fast because I realized that the ambulances in this hospital, for one particular reason, I don't know why, in order to pull into the emergency room, you had to go into the street, back it in, and go in a curve and pull all the way back in reverse. And from there, we could take the patients out. There was only 2 slots open. I knew we'd done our job in dropping off this patient. So I immediately decided to switch the beds and cots just in case there was another ambulance there. And I wanted to move my ambulance out of the way so the fire department can pull in and they can quickly rush this patient. So as I quickly wrapped up the cots and the linens and folded up, I began to run down the hallway with the bed by myself so I can put the cots into the ambulance while I heard over the radio, the PA system, attention please, we have a code yellow, which is a serious trauma in the emergency room. Attention please, we have a code yellow trauma in the emergency room. Meaning all the teams, surgical team, radiology departments respond, and all the available doctors and nurses staff respond for somebody who's in a serious critical condition, somebody who had received a serious trauma. As I was running to the back of the ambulance, I opened up the back of the ambulance and I noticed that there was still parking available to the right of me. So I grabbed the bed and the cot and I pulled it in real fast. And it was really interesting because before I put the bed into the ambulance, I looked to the right and the ambulance, the paramedics department has not shown up. I didn't even hear the sirens or anything. I grabbed the bed and I locked it into the back. And immediately, as soon as I closed the back of my ambulance door, the paramedics had already not only arrived, but they pulled the ambulance in reverse and parked it in reverse. As soon as I slammed it, I felt my right arm being grabbed. It was a paramedic driver. He quickly grabbed my arm and he pulled me towards the back of his ambulance. He says, I need your help. And I quickly responded and says, what do you need me to do? He just says, bag him as soon as he comes out. Now, bagging means that there's a tube already down somebody's throat, and the bag, I forcefully put some pressure inside. The person is no longer really able to breathe. I'm the one pushing oxygen inside and releasing the bag so the oxygen can come back out. So there it goes. The paramedic opened up the doors. He grabbed the bed and he started pulling it out. I could see the person's feet first, and then the stomach, and then the chest. Finally, when I saw the corner of the head, I could see a huge, huge open gash wound right here. His head was lying on the pillow, and on the side of his pillow was his brains. Immediately, I grabbed the bag and I began to squeeze air into them. It was a 15-year-old boy with a tube in his throat. Well, when he looked at me, he gave me this horrible, horrible look. This look I've never seen before. But it was a look saying, help me, save me. See, for some reason, this kid already knew his time was up. So immediately we begin to run down the hallway. And he looked at me, and I began to pray inside my heart and my spirit, saying, Jesus, please don't let this kid die. Immediately, this kid, when he looked at me, he looked above me because his eyes were still open and conscious. He couldn't speak, but his eyes were still open. He looked above me, looking at the ceiling, and when he looked above me, looking at the ceiling, his eyes began to widen up, real open. And then I could see his body trying to move away from what he was looking at, which was above to the top left of me, which was the ceiling. And he was terrified with this horrible look, unable to really move because he was strapped in with 3 seatbelts, one on his chest, the other one on his abdominal area, and the other on his leg under the blanket. So he just tried to move to the best he can. And then he looks to the right. And when he began to look to the right, his eyes opened up even more and his body began to move as if almost something was tormenting him. Something was getting at him or something was coming for him. You see, he looked at the ceiling terrified, horrified. And then he looked at me with this desperate look saying, save me. I just continued to do all the best medical training I had. I was praying inside, but I continued to beg him as we were rushing to the trauma room. Well, when we got into the trauma room, immediately the nurses took over. I went outside of the trauma room and stood outside the hall. I put my back on the wall facing the entrance of the trauma room. I could see doctors running around, nurses running around. They quickly put him on a heart monitor, and I could see it, the blood pressure. He had the pulse of the heart rate and the breathing. See, he was still alive and he was fighting for his life. This young 15-year-old boy was fighting for his life. I continued to pray and watch from the hallway. Well, for some unexplained reason, as I was praying inside my heart for this person, something happened. I couldn't explain it up to this day. But as I was continuing praying, now this was around 1:30 in the afternoon. This was not at night. This was in the afternoon. So as soon as I began to pray, something had occurred. Immediately, for no reason, unexplained reason, I could not move my body. Not only could I not move my body, but the hallway I was standing in got darker. The noise faded away. The hallways got darker, and the temperature dropped significantly. I guess the best way I can compare it is if I'm wearing a swimsuit and I'm outside and it's 100 degrees and I quickly, immediately run into a walk-in freezer. I don't know how it occurred or what occurred. All I know is that my face was facing that entrance and I could not move. I could not hear. I couldn't even speak. During that moment, I felt a very, very, very dark presence. I've seen people have gone into houses that have been haunted per se with evil spirits per se. And yet this darkness was so much more greater. This darkness had an eerie, a wickedness with such power. And I felt it from the left. I knew something was all the way to my left. but I couldn't move my head. I couldn't move my hands. I couldn't even move I couldn't even cry out for help. I began to get paranoid and freak out. I said, what is happening to me? It's 1:30 in the afternoon. This is not a dream. The only thing I was able to move were my eyes. So I quickly moved my eyes to the left, and my head still looked to the right. So when I looked to my left, which on the camera looks like it's the right probably, when I looked to my left, I saw it. I saw this huge creature, this spirit, this darkness. I've never seen something like this before. It was all in black. It was almost as wide as the hospital's hallways. Now, the hospital hallways are very wide, if you ever noticed that. And the reason is just in case you have to have two beds slide through in the same hallway with patients. So I could see this creature. He had a long hoodie slash black robe. And he was coming from my left as if he was floating. And he was coming closer and closer and closer. And I could feel the darkness. The more closer it got, the more darker it felt, the more stronger, the more hatred. Immense amount of hatred. I've never felt that hatred before. With an incredible amount of hatred and darkness, I felt it and I was afraid. And for the like of me, I don't know why. Why? But I guess everybody does it. Or in the horror movies, people do it. I had to look at the face. When I looked at the face, it had a long hoodie over it, and everything was black. It was pitch black. But the face area, it was darker. It was blacker than black. It was a darkness within a darkness. I've never seen that dark color before. I've been in a dark room where everything is so dark I could put my hand in front of my face and I can't even see nothing. But this inside the facial area, well, that was a darkness within a darkness. As it was floating its way towards me, it immediately stopped. And when it stopped, I could see the head like moving like. And when it did that, it was as if it was shocked that I was able to see it. It was shocked, like, who knows I'm here? Because when it was going down the hallway, it wasn't looking at me. It was looking straight. It was on a mission. It was on its assignment. It was coming for somebody. So when it stopped, it was shocked because it noticed and it was aware that I could see it. How do I know that? Well, I know because when it stopped, I could see the hoodie raise its head towards me and it looked at me. Boy, I'm telling you, if you don't believe in Jesus, you would. You would definitely cry out, Jesus. It was the horriblest, the worst, coldest feeling I've ever felt. When it looked at me, it examined me. And yeah, you better believe it. When it examined me, I was praying, I was declaring the blood of Jesus. Everything I was taught, everything that I knew from the Bible, I threw everything out. You see, when you finally have an encounter with death, well, there's no turning back. You have to know who you are or what you believe in. When it looked at me, it immediately examined me, but after that, it just grabbed his head and just moved forward as if it's going to continue on the same path. So I began to pass. And when it passed right by me, I was not able to move, and you better believe I was horrified. I was scared. I was terrified, horrified, whatever you want to say. I can't really describe how it really is unless you encounter it yourself. I'm doing the best at how I can describe it. But when that spirit of death passed through me, it turned around and it pivoted to the left, going right into that trauma room. You see, during that time and that moment, the machines on that 15-year-old boy said he was still alive. That 15-year-old was fighting for his life. But when that spirit turned around and pivoted and was going straight into that room, the moment it hit the side barriers of that room, the moment it hit that, it was as if this hand came down over my face. It was as if somebody was telling me, you can't see what's about to happen. Because if you do see what's about to happen, you would lose your sanity. This is too much for you. A couple things happened. One, when that hand came down, I was no longer able to see death. I was able to get my hearing back. I was able to immediately move my body, and the lights got brighter. The hallway got back to the same temperature. And immediately I heard the beeps, the sound it makes on the monitor when the person is no longer alive. At that same exact moment, I saw this spirit go through those doors. The doctors went from trying to keep this patient alive till now trying to bring him back from the dead. For several minutes, I still continued to stand there because I was freaking out of what had just occurred. I was still trying to process, what is this? I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't on alcohol. I was on a 24-hour shift, but my shift began at 8 in the morning. It was only 5 hours within my shift. So there's no way I was tired. There was no way it was a dream. However, for that 15-year-old boy, the doctors fought their best. The nurses ran and tried their best. But he never came back. After everybody had left except for 2 doctors there, because they had already called him, they pronounced him dead at the time of death. One of the doctors looks at the nurse and says, check for tattoos to see if it's gang related. For some reason, that nurse looked at me, and I guess she assumed because I'm Hispanic, I know about gangs, which I kind of did. You know, I grew up on the east side of Aurora. A couple friends of mine never made it past 18, unfortunately. But they called me in to see and look at the patient's tattoos to see if it's gang related. So when I walked in, it was a horrible feeling. The moment I walked into that trauma room, I could feel this horrible, dark presence. It was gloomy, it was wicked, this atmosphere was horrible. When I walked up, the patient still had the bag over his mouth, the tube. His eyes were wide open with a horrible look. It was as if almost something came and began to slowly rip his spirit away from his body and tormenting him. I've seen patients die. I've seen people die in the medical field. I was a volunteer firefighter for a couple of years. I got my fair share of picking up dead bodies from car accidents, from recent car accidents. But this 15-year-old kid, the face he left and remained on his lifeless body was as if somebody came and ripped his soul apart and took it with them. I couldn't handle it. I had to grab the blanket, put it over his face. So I began to slowly uncover his arms to see if there's any tattoos on his arms. I didn't see any tattoos, and so I covered his left arm. Then I uncovered the left side of his leg. During this time, I was beginning continuously asking God, what had I encountered? Is this real? Am I losing it? I've never seen something like this before. How could this be? How could it be so perfect that when I saw death come, immediately hit the door, the heart monitor went from the person having a pulse to immediately dying. As I was processing all that, and I lifted up the blanket on the left side, I could see his legs. That's when I heard a clear, audible voice. And that voice said to me, this is who came for him. You see, this young 15-year-old kid, he had two gang signs. One was disrespecting one gang, and the other one was lifting up his gang. Those were tattoos on his left leg. When I saw those tattoos and I heard that voice from God, and it was amazing because when I heard the voice, it wasn't, in my head or my heart. No, it was as if God himself was standing in the hallway in that same room, and he yelled out loud to me in an audible voice and says, this is who came for him. So when I heard that voice and I saw that, I put the blanket down. I told the nurse, this is I don't know if he's in a gang, but on his left, there's a tattoo. It's the disrespecting one gang and it's lifting up another gang. So you guys do what you want. Can I please go now? The nurse looked at me and immediately knew something was up. Somehow she knew I saw something. She said, yeah, go. So when I left, I went into the paramedic room. You see, I expected my partner to be there and the other paramedics from the fire department that just arrived there. They had just brought in a 15-year-old kid with a gunshot wound to the head, so you better believe they're going to do their report properly. When I opened up the door and I went inside, I couldn't even close the door when I hit the ground. It was such a painful feeling because I knew that this 15-year-old kid will never see heaven. I knew that what came for him was real. I can't explain it. I couldn't explain it back then. But it was as if almost God was saying, I hurt for each and every one of my children every day. I cried about 10 minutes on that floor. I continued to pray out and crying out to God, please bring them back. Finally, I was able to get myself together because, the paramedics were going to walk in and see a grown 22-year-old man walk in, and then he's crying. It's like, oh, what are you doing there? I got myself together, cleaned my face, and looked around, and nobody was in the paramedic room. Finally, I walked around the hallway to the nurse's office, the station they had from the emergency department. And my paramedic partner was there, and he's like, "Hey, man, where you been? I was looking for you." And I just, I looked at him, and I was like, "Dude, I was in, uh, I was in the paramedic room." And for some reason, he looked at me. He's like, almost as if I was lying about being in the paramedic room. I didn't hear anybody come in, and if they would have came in, they would have had to step on me because I hit the ground crying. So, needless to say, for approximately 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I could not be uh, in a dark room. I couldn't even sleep at night. I had to sleep with the lights on. It took me a while to slowly get back into somewhat of a normal life. You know, a lot of people are saying this is real, this is not. And well, the truth is, heaven and hell is real. I never asked to see that. And I wish nobody could see that ever. Up to this day, I don't want to recall that. I don't want to remind myself of that. Because what I saw was so real and so impacting my life. The level of darkness, the level of hatred beyond man's measurements. It's beyond our understanding of so much hatred. But the truth is, heaven and hell is real. We have a choice to make. You have a choice to make. I have a choice to make. The Bible says in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and he who believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life." The truth is, God hurts when every person perishes. As powerful and as mighty as he is, he gave that 15-year-old child a free will, just like you have one and I have one. You see, that child probably knew about God, and his parents probably told him. He probably said, as I get older, maybe I'll just do something. But on that day in April 2000, that 14 or 15-year-old boy never knew. You see, he never knew because he was in a school, in a classroom, and another gang member walked in. He walked in and pointed the gun and started shooting at him. He never knew that was his day. He thought maybe tomorrow would come. Maybe I'll change my life tomorrow. Maybe I'll choose. But he didn't know that day was his last day. Jesus is alive, and there is a heaven and hell. It's sad because those who practice witchcraft and brujeria and santeria, they're so aware of the supernatural realms. But yet, so many of us, especially in America, we don't believe in it. But every day people are perishing. Today could be your last day. Lord willing, it's not. Don't wait for tomorrow to decide to serve God. Make the choice. You see, Jesus said he's the resurrection and the truth and the life. Jesus said, if you confess before man, I'll confess before my Father. Choose to serve Jesus Christ. Because you don't know when your day, time, or hour will come. And even if you don't believe, even if you think it's baloney, it's a joke, they don't care. They don't want you to believe. They want you to continue sleeping until your last heartbeat. Then they come and take you. I know there's some people out there right now that are willing to give their lives to Jesus. You see, Jesus died and he rose from the grave. He conquered death. Death has no power over Jesus. So who do you want to comfort you on your last heartbeat? You want Jesus or death? Jesus representing life or Satan representing death? But please know this. The God that you serve will be the God that comes after you on your last heartbeat. So right now, if you want to receive Jesus Christ into your heart, repeat this prayer after me. Lord Jesus, I believe that you are the Son of God. I believe that you died for my sins and rose from the grave on the third day. I confess to you that I am a sinner. Jesus, forgive me of all my sins. Wash me with your precious blood. And Lord Jesus, I invite you into my heart as my Lord and Savior. Lord, I want to see you on my very last breath I